Hello, and today I'm going to share with you what I think is one of the most fundamental mistakes that I see marathon and half marathon runners make in their training. And that is the way that they focus and utilize race pace in their training and ultimately on race day. So throughout this video, I'm going to share some tips with you that I think will help you fundamentally improve your training and race day experience. So number one, if I ask a runner to go out for an easy run, quite often they're making some sort of comparison in their head with the race pace. So what I mean by that, say for instance that their race pace in their head is 8 minutes per mile, 9 minutes per mile, whatever it is. Well, I might say to them, go out to do an easy run and I want it to be conversational. And they find that a conversational run means that they're running at 10 minutes a mile, maybe 10.5 minutes a mile. For them, there is a big difference between their race goal, their ego. Quite often I would get the comment, it feels too easy. And I always say, too easy compared to what? And what I'm actually saying is you're making some sort of comparison in your mind. It's a bit like somebody that says, that's expensive. The moment somebody says that, you're saying, well, what are you comparing it with? Because it's a comparison. The same with runners. When they say this feels too slow, what are you comparing it with? And insidiously, in most cases, you are comparing it with your race pace. And this has an impact because it means that quite often you will be pushing your running, particularly in the early stages of your training, too hard. And you really need to bring it more easier early on. There is a place for race pace in training, which we will come to in a moment. So this either consciously or unconsciously idea of race pace then gets many runners into their training trying to do race pace too early, when race pace is more of a thought than a reality. So their training hasn't yet built up the ability to maintain race pace. It's like your brain is spending fitness capital that your body doesn't yet have. Just because we think a thing doesn't make it true. Now, we all know that, but as runners, quite often that's not the case. So, that when you're training has a massive impact on runners in the respect that it makes them do as I said earlier, their easy runs too hard. A lot of the runs, they do harder than they need to. They then start to look to do more race pace running. So on their longer runs, they're like, well, I need to be doing race pace because I'm going to be doing 8.5 minute miles for my marathon or whatever it is. I need to be doing that in my long run. This is a rehearsal. In essence, it's kind of true. But as I said, quite often then their body can't maintain that at earlier stage in the training. And that means they get fatigued, they get tired, they get despondent, they don't see the results they want, and it spirals. Whereas if you maintain a definite difference between knowing race pace is an outcome goal, race pace is what you want, and then the process of what you do to get or as near to that race pace goal, which we will come to in a moment, is totally different. That you aren't going to be always running at your race pace or even near it in a lot of cases. Once you get your head around that, then life becomes a lot easier. Now, what purpose does race pace serve? And we're going to come to that now. So you might be thinking, okay, where does race pace actually fit in? Well, it fits in two ends of the scale, really. It fits in as your long-term goal. I understand that if you want to run a marathon at a certain end time or half marathon, a sub 4 hour or 2 hour, you've got to have a goal. So I totally get that. All I'm saying is don't let that goal get in the way of the process as you go through. Now, as you get into that last 4 or so weeks, depending on the type of plan that you've got, you should have and could have, depending on your plan, built up a more likelihood of being able to run at race pace. Now, yet again, many runners make the mistake of, right, so I've got a 17-mile run. I'm going to do the whole thing at race pace. And it's a bit like you've grown this beautiful flower, you're training over, say, 12 weeks already. And on week 13, you rip the bottom of it out by kind of, I'm going to see what's under the hood. I've built up some capacity. Now I'm going to hit it hard. Instead of doing something like some of my runners will have, say, like a 16-mile run, have a finish fast in the last 2 miles, or have some variations, some repetitions of pace throughout the 16 miles. There are lots of options that you can do to kind of have a taster of that race pace, but not go full in, because we all know how long it takes to get over a race, particularly a marathon and to a degree half marathon. So if you go out on some of your runs full out race pace, that is going to take time to get over. So it really, yet again, doesn't really fit in with the process goal. But you can utilize race pace nearer the end of your training to sort of sharpen yourself up, to give yourself confidence, to be able to see how far you've come. But don't do it in that respect. And how do we use race pace on race day? So you come all this way through the video, and say you've come all this way for your training, and you haven't gone mad on race pace, but you've got a race pace goal, and you're actually just getting near to running your marathon or half marathon. Surely now is the time to dial in the watch to that race pace. In a way, no one knows for sure what will happen on race day. And one of the things I see is, I've done in my own running, and I've seen runners I coach do, is race pace creating an inflexibility and a lack of adaptability in a race plan. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have training that builds you up to that race pace. I'm not saying that, of course, if you have to get round a marathon or half marathon in a certain time, you're going to have a race pace goal. But what it does help to have is a flexibility and an adaptability on race day. That on race day, you don't feel great. What if the weather's 10 centigrade hotter than you expected? What if? How are you going to adapt? If you are rigid on your race pace plan, then you are going to argue with certain realities that you can't fight, and you're going to lose. And there's only 3 outcomes, really, I think, from running a marathon or half marathon. Either you hit your goal, you go faster. And whilst that can seem blindingly obvious, I think it sometimes needs sharing, because I don't think runners always think about it like that. So when I'm running or coaching, I say, well, okay, the perfect goal is you do your marathon in 3:59, and we know what the pace is for that. What's the B and the C goal? And how are we going to approach that? And I often check in with myself while I'm running, and I ask myself the question with a marathon, every, say, 3 or 4 miles, am I on pace? Do I need to slow down? Could I go faster? There's not very often in a marathon I think I can go faster in the early stages. I'm either going to maintain that pace, or in some cases, if in doubt, I might slow down a little bit, because too many marathons are won and lost in that first half. I've seen so many marathon runners waving to a crowd, going past me, looking great at 13 and 14 miles, to be by the side of the road at 18 miles. And that's an extreme example. But if you run a marathon, you know what I mean. And to some degree, race pace can be responsible for that. Not the pace itself, but the inflexibility and the lack of adaptability that we attach to it. So all I would say on race day, have a goal, obviously, have an outcome, but yet again, on race day, have a micro that you can use so that you are flexible and adaptable if things don't go right. Or, as with one marathon I did, I just decided I could go a lot quicker than I was going. That can happen as well. My race pace goal was too slow. I decided I could go faster. So there's flexibility in your running. You've got a goal, but it's not like something that hangs around your neck and means that you haven't got adaptability and flexibility in your race day plans. So I hope you've enjoyed that video. I know race pace is a thing. I know we need to have an outcome goal, but I just see it so often with runners that I coach and conversations we have in our Marathon Maximiser, which is my free workshop I do about every month or so. I like to think of it as a stepping stone between my YouTube channel here, where it's a consumption of information, and my coaching, which is coaching. The Marathon Maximiser helps runners look at their generic running plan and take the uncertainty out of it, to give them the tools to be more predictable with their training plan so that they arrive on race day more confident. Now, my evil plan is that some of the people at the end of that 10 days, it's a 10-day workshop, join me on my foundations program, which is an 8-week program. But no one is under any pressure to do that. You've got a choice. And I think a lot of people gain a lot of value from the 10 days. So if you feel that you need a bit more than just more information, you want to know a little bit more specifics of how to change things, then there will be a link somewhere in below this video for you to join the next Marathon Maximiser. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've got any comments, please do comment. I reply to most comments. Bye for now.